Hi, if you've been following my website for many years, you know I've written a couple of books, and you might recognise this rarity. It's the first edition of the Tower and the Magus. I do actually have a copy of it. I thought it's time to talk a bit about this book, actually. I haven't done it before, surprised enough. Here's the new version, okay, and here's the old version. There we go. As you can see, they're a little bit difficult. The new version is much shinier, and there's a few changes there. If you notice, it's now called the Tower and the Magus, rather than Tower and the Magus. Funnily enough, the original title was the Tower and the Magus, but with the rush to get it printed, that never happened. So what is this book about, the Tower and the Magus? The line at the top says, opening the key to divination, magic, and the holy guardian angel. That's a pretty big, ambitious kind of rubric for the whole book. And the idea behind this book is to explore the first part of the first stage of the opening of the key spread, the Golden Dawn opening of the key spread. And when I first tried to do this spread, I got it completely wrong. And I just had to put it away for a long time. And when I studied more and worked around things, and I realised, because of the idea of reading these cards, is that you read the cards, you fan the cards out and read the cards in a kind of sequence, using card counting, and then realised there's this elemental dignity system as well, which uses the four elements to analyse the relative strengths and weaknesses of the cards each side of each other, and you can build up a picture. I did try to do the whole thing all at once. And then I realised that actually the way to do it is not with single cards, but with cards. If you do it in groups of three, then there's a relationship between the three cards in a triangle, and you have the Hegelian dialectic at work as well. And it's the idea that each card influences the other card in the group of three, and then you can build up a pattern with these three cards as they strengthen and weaken each other. And the Tower and the Magus was my ambitious attempt to actually explore this amazing spread that has 5 stages, and it's never really been discussed or analysed. It's a kind of secret treasure that the Golden Dawn never understood. Even to this day, I see Golden Dawn writers, and who write about the Tower, and they either ignore the spread completely, or just kind of say what is already out there as far as the Golden Dawn said, which is not a lot. And you have to realise that the instructions the Golden Dawn give for using this spread are actually like stage directions. When you write a play, you have the name, and then the dialogue, and there might be 1 or 2 sort of directions at some point, but it's up to the director and the actors and the producer and everything else to construct the visual spectacle that is a play. So this is what the Golden Dawn had. They had this system that they never understood. The OTO, particularly the American OTO, had completely clueless on what a wonderful technique and system that they have with it. And so, since no one else was writing about it, I thought, well, I'd better do it. And I found my publisher at AN Books. And when we decided to write this book, it was important that we didn't write another tarot book that had 78 chapters, or 22 chapters, 1 chapter for each card of the deck. So how are we going to get around that? And what we decided to do was have 11 chapters. There was a number of magic and change according to Aleister Crowley. And it seemed a good idea to do this. And then it's a matter of, which chapters, how do we organise the things? And this book was supposed to be a beginner's book. It still is in my review in many respects. So when you turn it into 11 chapters, then you can do some interesting things with it. And one of the things that my publisher came up with, as a suggestion, is that I actually, at the beginning of each chapter, do a commentary on the pairing of the major arcana, and he suggested we do the pairing from the 1st and the last cards working inwards. So for the first chapter here, we have the Fool, the Universe, and the Aces. So the Fool is the first card, and the Universe is the last. And because we want to do the court cards as well in there, we included the Aces. And it was a really interesting exercise for me to do, which brought out an awful lot of things. So what stages do we have in this book? What we have is an overview of reading the cards, how to pair the cards, which is a Golden Dawn technique that's part of the Open and the Key. We discuss elemental dignities, then the card counting, which is a really important part of the whole system, because card counting gives you the chance to build up a story of what's happening in the reading from various positions. So you can actually do it from any of the court cards that are in a sequence to actually see how those court cards interact with each other, and you can see lots of levels come out as you do that. And then there's this thing I discovered. I spent 2-3 months analysing this one spread that I did for this book. And I used an Excel spreadsheet basically to sort of go through the cards, the counting, the analysing the elements, strengths, weaknesses, and all these things. And I went through every single card in both directions. And something I realised, I noticed, while there are many cards that had many cards connecting onto it, there was actually 1 or 2 cards in each sequence where no card counted onto that card. And I realised that, and I call it an unaspected card, because that's a kind of concept that you find in astrology. An unaspected planet is one that has none of the classical angles like triangles, squares, oppositions, aspecting onto it. And it means that it's kind of free, it's not trapped by anything, it's nothing's influencing it. So this kind of obviously counts onto 2 cards, but it's free to sort of do its own kind of thing. And I put this in a kind of context of the Keter and the Tree of Life, which I'm not so keen on now, but hey, you know, we try things out, experimenting. And these cards, when you find them, they have the spiritual forces that are like the seed or the beginning of the Nile, the source of the Nile, which is the beginning of things. And it's something, if it's an aspected court card, it might be that that person is unknown to your client, and that's why you talk about it. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about, because that person hasn't entered their life yet. It's almost a prediction of the future that's coming out. So what other chapters do we have in here? It's interesting because, you know, when you write a book, you don't actually sort of go back to it very often. So I have love relationships. And then I did a chapter on performing readings for the public, how to go about setting up a professional tarot practice. And then I went on to the visionary experiences of the shaman. So this whole kind of, one of the things that came out when you read this way is a lot of spiritual transformations and visions that happen. And one way you can talk about them is in shamanic terms. Always a good idea to have sex somewhere in your book, so I have a chapter on sex magic. And then the last chapter is one that's about the spirits of the tarot, which is an interesting thing because the 2 center cards, that when you come to the pairing, the center cards that come out as fortune and strength or lust, both magical cards. And then I found myself doing some meditations, which is a kind of interesting exercise. And also I wanted to talk about the 22 spirits of Libra 231, which is a powerful and very unusual system of magic that Crowley wrote about, and still misunderstood, well, pretty much completely by tarot writers. I also talked about the Clifford, the shells. They're an interesting point of view, the shells, and I wanted to put them in an entirely different context. And then they've kind of finished up with the concept of self-initiation, how you can transform yourself and work through these things rather than going through a magical order. So you know you don't have to join one of these things to transform yourself. So there it is, the Tarot and the Magus. It's still a book of its class. You know, there is no other book. As far, you know, I wrote the book. I'm not going to say these things anyway. But it is, you know, you have to break the genre sometimes, and that's what I really hope I've done with this book. I've got copies of it. I can sign them as well. I can put down, you know, dedicate it to you or your partner or your best friend or something like this. And miracle of miracles. Still have one of the old copies. There you are. Tarot and the Magus.